Hey everyone, how you doing? I'm Jay, and this is the 2015 Aston Martin DB9 Volante. I'm really excited to do this unboxing review for you of this car because it's very, very special. I'm going to explain why over the next several minutes. I'm also going to talk about its engine, its history, its design inside and out, what's the competition, and finally, pricing. But before I get started, I want to thank Los Gatos Luxury Cars in Los Gatos, California for letting me come on down and film today. So let's get started. Now, the DB9, it was actually first launched way back in 2003, but it's been on the market ever since. It sold very well for Aston Martin, and only this past March at the Geneva Motor Show did we see its successor, the DB11. I was there in person to see it being unveiled, and it is also an absolutely gorgeous car. But for today, this is the DB9, and actually, speaking of which, what about the DB10? DB9, DB11, DB10? Actually, you saw it already in the latest James Bond film, Spectre. And there were several film cars made, and one of them actually just sold for $3.5 million at auction. So, fun fact right there. But back to the DB9. So, this car was designed initially by a guy named Heinrich Fisker. You probably have heard that name before in the fact that he started another company called Fisker, the Fisker Karma, which is no longer made anymore. But he was a very famous car designer. He's still involved in the business, and he did all of the styling here. So if you were to compare the DB9 to the Fisker Karma, you would probably see a lot of very similar design similarities. So this is what they call a Volante. That's pretty much Aston Martin speak for a convertible. And just looking at the exterior design here, you know, you can see why this lasted for so long on the market. Even though it came out in 2003, well over a decade ago, it still looks fresh. Now, Aston Martin gave this a facelift update back in around 2013, I believe. But even now, it just looks great. And in that facelift, it was relatively minor. It gave it some fresh headlight design. It widened the front splitter a little bit, and a few other little tweaks. But overall, this is the same car that came out years ago. So why is the Aston Martin DB9, it also comes as a coupe, and the Volante, the convertible, why is this car so special? Well, it's because it has a naturally aspirated V12 engine. Now, a naturally aspirated V12, it's sort of a dying breed. Even the DB11, its successor, it has a twin-turbo V12 engine instead of the naturally aspirated. Why? Because when you twin turbocharge a car, you can get more power and lower CO2 emissions. But the DB9, it is classified as a Grand Tour. That means it's a 2+2. 2 seats in the front, 2 seats in the rear. Even though, as you'll soon see, the rear seats, they're very, very small. They're more or less for show. A couple of children will be able to fit back there, but I don't think an adult will be comfortable back there for very long, especially on a long road trip. Now, the car you see here, it is painted a cobalt blue and a chestnut tan leather interior, and I just absolutely love this color combo. It's just beautiful. This blue, I think it's the best exterior blue paint job that any automaker sells today. And this is the heart of it all, a 6.0 liter V12 engine, naturally aspirated. It's just wonderful. It has a total of 510 horsepower and 457 pound-feet of torque. All of that power is sent to the rear wheels through a 6-speed automatic transmission. When the DB9 first came out, a manual was initially offered, but it's not anymore. So the only gearbox you have is a 6-speed automatic with paddle shifters. It's not a dual clutch. It's an okay transmission. It's definitely not the best out there. It is dated, but it does the job just fine here. And what's kind of interesting about that engine, because as I'll tell you in a few minutes, this car is so heavy, it sits behind the front axle in order to improve weight distribution. Some very smart engineering by Aston Martin right there. And looking at this interior, I really like that, what they call chestnut tan. It's great. Notice all that really nice wood trim. That's obviously real wood. The aluminum trim throughout as well. It's just really, really beautiful. Again, like a Bentley, a Rolls-Royce, Ferrari, this is all hand-stitched. It's real craftsmanship throughout. You should really try to take a look at these fine details. Even the rear seats, as small as they are, you have that beautiful Aston Martin emblem back there. Again, it's all in the details. You know, this is like the Rolls-Royce and the Bentley Continental GT, the Rolls-Royce Wraith. This is, you know, a great example of modern-day coach building. Coach building is an art that's, in my opinion, it's really fading fast, and it's great seeing Aston Martin keeping that alive. And looking at this interior, again, more closely, it's got this really wide center console and dash. And that's something Aston Martin's kind of become known for. If you step inside, let's say, the McLaren 650S, I recently did an unboxing review as well. It has a very narrow center console. Even though these cars are not at all competitors, it's just interesting to see the difference between how two car companies, in this case UK companies, like to do things. So let's start it up here, and I'll be back in a second and just see how this V12 sounds. Alright, again, naturally aspirated V12, another dying breed, it's sad to say. But in this case, this car goes from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 4.5 seconds and a top speed of 183 miles per hour. Bear in mind, it also weighs the car a little over 4,200 pounds. And just by comparison, to give you an idea how heavy that is, a Mazda MX-5 Miata weighs about 2,200 pounds. Now, everything else in this interior, there's a number of really good standard features. Aside from the leather, you have a 6-disc CD changer with an iPod connection, premium audio system, trip computer, Bluetooth, a reverse camera, all these things that have actually become pretty common in just about any car. But there's some good other optional features you can get, and just like with any car in this class, they add up very fast. The wheels that you saw earlier, those are 20-inch 10-spoke, what they call liquid silver wheels. Those alone cost an extra $31,000. The black brake calipers were another almost $1,600. And there's even Alcantara trim inside, another $1,600. So to give you an idea, this car has over $20,000 worth of extra features, but I'll give you the final price in a few minutes. But I also want you to take a look at this infotainment screen. Again, this is how you can see how out of date in many ways the DB9 is. This is a very small infotainment screen. In the DB11, which I sat in a couple months ago, it's much bigger, it's more modern. Aston Martin did what it could in this case. It is quite small. It does the job, but you know, you're not buying an Aston Martin DB9 Volante for the infotainment screen alone. It's about the experience of just having this car and driving it and being in a grand tour of something of this caliber. Now, you might also be wondering what does DB stand for? DB, it stands for they're the initials of a guy named David Brown, Sir David Brown, and he bought Aston Martin in 1948, right after World War II, and he is the one who actually made Aston Martin the company it is today. He brought in all these coach building elements and just really upped the standards. He eventually sold out the company, but his legacy still exists with all of the cars being named, or the top cars being named DB, and then you have the number. We're up to 11 now. It started with the DB1 back in 1948. Only 15 of those were made, and then followed by the DB2 in 1950, of which only about 411 of those were made. Another nice feature here is the folding soft top. It is a fabric top. It's not a hard top, which does save weight. It does raise and lower in only, I believe, 14 seconds, and you can do that up to speeds to up to 30 miles per hour. Bear in mind that's really good, because the Ferrari California T, by comparison, to raise and lower its hard top, the car has to be at a standstill. But unlike the Ferrari California T, the Aston Martin DB9's rear seats, they don't fold flat to allow for more trunk space, which is something I really would have liked to have. I think that's a great feature in the California T. But again, DB9, it is an older car, but I still really, really like it. So what's its competition? Aside from the Ferrari California T, you also have the Bentley Continental GTC, the Mercedes SL65, and even the Aston Martin V12 Vantage S. It has the same engine, but the Vantage is a smaller car. And all those cars I just mentioned, they're priced above $200,000, and the DB9 Volante, it has a starting price of $203,000, and there's also a $1,700 gas guzzler tax, and then once you combine the transport and handling fees, the $21,000 of extra features as I already mentioned, you're going to have a grand total of about $230,000 for the car you see here. And I really believe that's good value, and here's why. Because it has this naturally aspirated V12, there's not many other cars on the market today that have a naturally aspirated V12. For starters, you do have the Ferrari F12 Berlinetta and the Lamborghini Aventador. Both of those cars cost at least $100,000 more. They are supercars. This is a Grand Tour, but it has a supercar level engine in it, that's what makes the DB9 Volante and Coupe so special. Another close competitor, in my opinion, is the Mercedes-Benz SL65 AMG. As I already mentioned, it has also a 6.0-liter V12, a little more powerful at 621 horsepower and 738 pound-feet of torque. Again, pricing for that is also around the same, around the $220,000 range. So, what are the downsides to owning this car? In my opinion, again, not many. It's just so beautiful, but it is expensive to maintain. It does have an annual fuel cost of nearly $4,000. There is that limited luggage space, and as I already mentioned, the infotainment system, it's very outdated. But I think all three of those they're not deal breakers by any means. It's you're getting an Aston Martin, you're getting one of the best Grand Tours with coach building quality and one of the best sounding engines on the market today. And there's really not a bad angle from this car whatsoever. And you really got to applaud Heinrich Fisker for just being years ahead and using all of his design skills to come up with what you see here. So everybody, I'm out of time for today. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any more questions for me, leave them in the comment section below. If you have any suggestions for future cars you want me to do an unboxing review, also leave those in the comment section. And be sure to check out the full review of the 2015 Aston Martin DB9 Volante on carbuzz.com. So until then, I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching.